What are they thinking? Asking, what is a woman? They don't know that. That one they're asking all the time, what is a woman? I'll tell you what a woman is. A woman is me.
So hello everyone, once again from the Kingdom of Cambodia. Now, I thought I had made my last video on conservative comedy, or at least the last video for a long while. Now, back in September, I actually made a video talking about generally conservative comedy. I can't believe I was in Vietnam at the time and I'm still not home. It feels like it's been so long. But we're revisiting the topic today for good reason, because of the Super Bowl, which debuted a new advert from Greg Gutfeld. And I'm sorry if I accidentally keep calling him like Greg Gutfield or something when I'm talking, because apparently he's now the king of late night television. But also we have another thing on Fox News, the comeback of Roseanne Barr. And seriously, I hope your tolerance for like secondhand embarrassment is pretty good for this video, because the Roseanne stuff is so painful to watch. I watched it once planning this video, and then while screen recording it, I had to just put my headphones in and like throw them away because I could not listen to this again. I am going to listen to it one more time for you guys, but you're going to want to stick around for that one. And just generally, again, we're just going to talk about why conservative comedy is so terrible. And the short version is, a lot of conservative comics don't actually attempt to make jokes. They just say stuff that they know their audience agree with, and then they laugh and cheer and stuff like that. So they say their own political positions without trying to actually make a joke, because that's what gets a reaction. But that's why they're not actually funny. Like, sometimes some conservative comics try and make jokes and they're terrible, but most of the time they're not actually trying to make jokes. They're just talking about pronouns and attack helicopters, like that hilarious one joke they have. And of course now they also have jokes about vaccines and stuff like that. So we're going to get into all of this today, but before we go any further, please like the video, follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and also on Instagram. Instagram is where I'm posting all about my travels around Southeast Asia, and all of that is archived on my highlight reels, which are broke down by month on my profile page. So if you care about that, go check out my Instagram. Also, I've posted 2 exclusive travel videos on my Patreon page. Hopefully me and my girlfriend are going to film the third one about our time in Thailand this weekend. And also you get access to my Nintendo Switch friend code and the private Patreon Discord server. So if you care about any of that stuff, go check out the Patreon page. Also check out my subreddit and check out the second channel down in the description. And on that note, I think we should just talk about like conservative comedy in general. And I guess for a lot of people, you don't really get exposed to conservative like monologue comedy or conservative stand-up comedy, because there are like plenty of funny enough conservatives. A lot of people liked Roseanne Barr for her show back in the day with John Goodman. A lot of people like stuff Tim Allen's been in, which has been comedy focused. But in terms of like stand-up comics, what happens is conservatives often appropriate people who weren't conservative. Like I made a couple videos about how they think George Carlin would have been on their side in the culture war and stuff like that, which is absolutely laughable. If you know anything about George Carlin, or even if you don't know anything about him, but watch like, I don't know, a couple YouTube clips of his comedy, which is clearly like more left-wing. But anyway, let's start by talking about Greg Gutfeld. Now, I was actually doing some research about like, who the hell is this guy? Because I've made videos on him for the last couple years on and off. And I was like, where does this guy come from? I was reading about his old like comedy show he used to have that was like at 3 a.m. in the morning. Apparently was really, really weird. But then if you were watching the Super Bowl, the bad version of football at the weekend, you would have seen an advert for Gutfeld. So quickly, let's have a look at this very, very small advert that played during the Super Bowl.
Gutfeld, new king of late night commercial, ready to roll.
Isn't this great?
Is this cultural appropriation?
Action.
Hello, America.
That's a wrap.
What?
Sorry, these ads are pricey.
So that is probably the funniest thing you're ever going to see Greg Gutfeld in, because at least it's trying to make a joke. Not the part about cultural appropriation, just the part about, you know, this being expensive and you can't do a long ad for this show. They said something in that advert about him being the king of late night TV, essentially. And I was wondering, like, where did this come from? Like, is he really that popular? Because I've watched some clips of his show, which I'm going to show you in a sec. And I was like, these are terrible. Like, who the hell is watching this? So I found this article by Forbes, which it says, With 2.5 million viewers, Fox News Channel's Gutfeld beats every show in late night TV. Something's happening in late night. On Tuesday night, Fox News Channel's Gutfeld delivered a total audience of 2.5 million viewers, a staggering audience for a late night show on cable, and the second biggest night in the history of Gutfeld's politics and comedy program. So with 2.494 million total viewers and 396,000 viewers in the key demographic group of adults 25 to 54, I bet most of these people are nearer 54, Gutfeld beat not just everything else on cable, but the high-profile broadcast network's late-night shows as well. CBS's The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was a close second with 2.1 million viewers and 375,000 viewers in the key demo, followed by The Tonight Show and ABC's Jimmy Kimmel. In an interview with Gutfeld executive producer Tom O'Connor in September, I asked him what it was that he thought was drawing an audience to Fox News in the late night. Part of the reason for that is the audience has really connected with some of the new guests we've introduced them to, but also they've gotten to see some FNC stars let their hair down for an hour. So apparently Greg Gutfeld's show is an absolutely smashing success. And according to that guy, the producer, he says it's for, some reasons, but I would likely say that Fox News is really popular. Fox News is really popular with older people who actually watch TV. Therefore, if you're breaking it down versus like the other shows, you can understand why it would have a higher audience, especially with older people, because older people watch TV and older people just leave the news on all the time. I saw a funny Reddit comment that said, I always see it when I'm at the gym as well. How much of these views are made up by like Planet Fitness gyms? Also, another part of this is it was mentioning Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, but I would say a lot of people might consume all of these people, but they all have like pretty similar politics, and with Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, it's a pretty similar format as well. So you might like switch between them, you might choose one instead of the other, you might have them in some sort of rotation. So it kind of like cannibalizes the audience, because if only one of them existed, I bet one of them would have better numbers than Gutfeld. But because three of them exist, including other things as well, then you're competing with basically the one conservative outlet, which is like one of the biggest news outlets on the planet, and you just won't be able to compete with those audience numbers. So that's my theory of why Gutfeld is popular, because as we're going to see right now, I don't think it's popular because it's the most funny thing in the whole world. And while there are some attempts at jokes, it's not just telling, people what they want to hear. These are terrible jokes. Now, I covered this in a longer video, so I'm just firstly going to play you some clips I shared in an older video last year before we talk about some of the newer clips and the newer jokes. So let's play a couple clips from Gutfeld in 2022.
Having a hard time drying out from the Trump era, even though they can call it a day at 4:30 in the afternoon while President Biden's digesting his early bird tapioca. It's almost like they'll find a Trump connection to any news item out there. And one network is cornering the market.
You're watching ATN, all Trump news, because everything else is boring by comparison.
I'm Anderson Lemon with the headlines. The annual Global Retirement Index is out with its latest list of the best places in the world to spend your golden years. Topping the list this year, Costa Rica, followed by Panama and Mexico. Sources say if Trump is elected in 2024, we can expect all Americans to retire and move to literally any country where Trump is not president. And I'll be on the first plane to Bermuda with a suitcase full of edibles. Police in Georgia say a weekend traffic jam was caused by a loose cow running along Interstate 285 near Atlanta, possibly spooked by a phone call from Donald Trump. Cars were at a standstill for about an hour until police were able to safely capture the cow and return it to its owner. Sources say this never would have happened if Donald Trump had an infrastructure plan that consisted of more than just turning wayward cattle into well-done steak.
You all made a great choice. For proof, over at MSNBC, let's see what Brian Williams is up to right now.
Good evening, I'm Brian Williams, and I am on Mars. Yes, I jumped on a chopper and now I'm on Mars. I've been here for a year now. I built a castle here made of mastodon carcasses and marshmallows.
So I'm not an expert on Fox News shows, so I don't know if this Greg Gutfeld show that I've just showed you was actually the same format as the current one because they seem a tiny bit different. Don't think it really matters though, because he still had a show on Fox News basically called Gutfeld. And I'll give credit to these two. At least they're trying jokes and satire in some ways. So you have two jokes there. One, a sketch about, you know, how the news reported on Trump and how they're whole hysterical, blamed all America's problems on Trump. But it just wasn't really funny. The jokes didn't land because I don't think it was really a good criticism and satire of like the American media landscape, because I do think there's potential in that video for a joke. And then the second one was about Brian Williams being on Mars because Brian Williams lied about his time covering the Iraq War. So now apparently he is lying about being on Mars and doing all of these things and stuff. And I said in my original video, who finds that funny, especially because it's so irrelevant? Didn't this happen in like 2015? Do people even remember that anymore? Like, is that how low you have to scoop through a barrel of like liberal embarrassments to find? And you have to make fun of that now because Brian Williams has had multiple jobs after being fired for lying. And I just want to talk about the first sketch in particular, because like I said in my original video, there is a joke here and there is something funny here, but they just butchered it, right? So did the liberal news media both overly focus on Trump, and did they also finally start calling out a lot of problems in America, but blaming it all on Trump? Could you make a good joke about that? Yes. Do people remember when they showed an empty Trump podium rather than covering Bernie Sanders' rally? Yes. But why couldn't they make this funny? Why couldn't they make this work? It's because conservatives are protecting the status quo. So to make this joke actually funny, you'd have to criticize the problems, right? So for example, if this news reporter started talking about how the whole of the liberal media was criticizing Trump for maybe his like Iran policy or foreign policy or stuff to do with like Cuba or stuff to do with immigration, I guess the joke would focus on how when Obama did terrible immigration policies, the liberal news media was silent because they didn't want to criticize their guy. But then you'd actually have to criticize the immigration policies because you'd have to show the hypocrisy, and you'd probably have to criticize the brutal immigration policies. Conservatives aren't going to go in that direction, so therefore you can't make it funny, because that's why The Onion is funny, and that's why the Babylon Bee is terrible, because the Babylon Bee tries to be satire in the same way this sketch tried to be satire, but because they won't go far enough in their satire, it just isn't funny and comes across as really boring. Where with The Onion, because they are willing to go that far, a more like liberal left direction, that's what makes it funny, because it's also true. With their parody of like the liberal news media in this clip, it's not funny because they're not really saying anything, and it's just too exaggerated and too over the top without being an effective satire. So that is the sketches on Greg Gutfeld's show. But now I want to show you some more recent clips. So I want to give a massive shout out to Kat Abu, who is someone who like covers Fox News pretty much like every single day. So while I said I'm not an expert on Fox News, it seems that Kat is. So maybe tweet her and ask, is the Gutfeld show I just showed you the same as this one? So follow her. So I think Twitter is our main thing. So follow her Twitter, but also follow her YouTube. I'm going to put the links in my description. But she uploaded a video the other day called Greg Gutfeld is Not the King of Comedy. And I just want to play you a couple clips she showed of his new show and some of the jokes he attempts in this one, Greg Gutfeld himself, and not sketches. So let's have a look at this.
Here's a joke he made on Friday about co-host Jessica Tarlov.
Jessica, I bet you had a nickname about your height. They call you Stilts. Hey, no. Stilts. Hey, can you unscrew that light bulb, Stilts?
And a lot of times the loudest laughter comes from his guests that he booked on the show. Like in this joke he made about Hunter Biden.
His idea of taking responsibility is having sex with his dead brother's wife.
You've also got some classic conservative humor, insulting women's bodies. He even managed to fit that in his episode about the Chinese spy balloon.
Would they have let it float to Europe, where it would end up dating a woman with armpit hair? No one deserves that, not even a balloon filled with explosives.
So massive shout out to Kat for just going through like Greg Gutfeld clips, like subjecting yourself to that like every single week. Must be a nightmare. Now, why I showed you that is just because these guys just can't be funny. Talking about, you know, women with armpit hair in Europe, and that weird joke about his like co-host's height just seems so forced and so bad. And it's just cringe inducing, right? So we have the conservative comedy, which doesn't land because it's not effective satire. And then we just have the forced jokes. And I think the problem is with Gutfeld is it isn't anti-humor. Like, people say Norm Macdonald was really funny, but he often did like this anti-humor where he would say something quite shocking. Like, he could kind of say something like what Greg Gutfeld said about Beau Biden's widow. I think the difference is Norm Macdonald would do it for like a reaction and to be provocative. I think Greg Gutfeld is trying to actually be funny. Like, he thinks that's funny, like talking about something like that, where Norm Macdonald was like, I know this isn't really funny, it's just provocative and sometimes like really outrageous, so I'll just say it. But even if you might want to view it as like a similar thing, I don't think they're going for the same thing. I think Greg Gutfeld is actually trying to make people laugh. And it's just so awkward because whenever I watch these clips of him, he makes these terrible jokes and like no one in the studio laughs. It's just really, really embarrassing. So like I said, I don't think he's drawn people in because he's hilarious. I think he's drawn people in because just loads of people watch Fox News, and conservative comedy is basically just telling conservatives that their political beliefs are awesome, their worldview is awesome, and they don't even really try to attempt jokes. But when they try to attempt jokes, they often fall flat because they're just bad. On that note of not actually trying to tell jokes, let's move on to Roseanne Barr's comeback, which has also been hosted on Fox News. This is literally one of the worst things I have ever watched in my life. I'm not even joking. I found this genuinely painful. It's not just for traditional conservative comedy about like identifying as a helicopter and stuff like that, although that type of stuff is in there. It really just seems like this person cannot do stand-up comedy, and it's just so painful to watch. And basically it's meant to be a big deal because it's her comeback from being cancelled. I mean, she talks about her being cancelled like she was a massive victim. Let's remind people what she was cancelled over. So Roseanne cancelled after Roseanne Barr's racist tweet about Valerie Jarrett. Roseanne Barr's racist tweet about former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett. Barr's post early Tuesday morning, which has been deleted, said that Jarrett, who is African American, was a product of the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes. Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ. And she pretty much hasn't done much work since, but you can go watch her do loads of crazy interviews about her like conservative politics. This person doesn't seem very stable at all. But now let's just get into her reasons for coming back and getting this nice deal on Fox. So she did a couple interviews with Fox News before she actually did her stand-up routine. So let's have a look at these. One is with Tucker Carlson. So let's get into why the cancelled Roseanne Barr is making a comeback.
Why is that? What
because we have to be more offensive when we come back, because we can't be beaten down. We can't let them kill comedy. We can't let, you know, these people who are censors and book burners have the last say over comedy. We have to protect comedy. It's the last free speech art form.
What is this special, and why is it on Fox Nation? What are you doing and why?
Well, it's kind of a return to stand-up after many years. And they offered me, you know, to come and do a stand-up special. And it was in response to being, you know, fired. And they came to my defense. And I was like, well, I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I need to have my say. I need to answer, and because, you know, I was kind of not allowed to even apologize for what happened. I was just like blackballed and, you know, just totally canceled from even commenting on what happened. So I thought, well, you know, stand-up is a great place to come back and say what happened and tell the truth about it, and also to talk about cancel culture itself and how horrible it is and how fascist. And jokes are a great way to, you know, scorn power, especially during Biden's presidency. My jokes are so great. They're the most offensive. I was talking to my friends who also were canceled, and we all were saying, we made a pact together. When we come back, we're going to be even more offensive than we've ever been before.
So a pretty typical victim complex exhibited by so many people who claim to be cancelled before getting massive deals on conservative networks. Like Gina Carano did a similar thing when she was talking with Ben Shapiro, talking about how she was the victim. Like, these people talk about personal responsibility as part of their conservative ideology. They never take responsibility for the stuff they say, like tweeting loads of racist stuff and then getting fired from your job. It's like pretty standard for like a lot of people, but also if you're like this public figure, a lot of these brands where you are like the face of their show and stuff, they don't want to associate with you anymore. So maybe just don't be a racist on social media and you won't be cancelled. But also Roseanne saying she's going to be really, really offensive. And the only thing I find really, really offensive about her is how bad this comedy is. Now, there's one segment about like pronouns and stuff like that. There's another about vaccines. So I'm going to show the pronoun stuff first. And if I don't show the vaccine stuff, that is just because it was way too bad to go on my channel. I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube for spreading like medical misinformation, because that's what Roseanne Barr is doing in this clip. But let's get into part of Roseanne's stand-up. Trust me, this is so painful. If you don't have tolerance for this stuff, please don't watch this part.
No concept of reality. They've been living in a bubble forever. Asking questions have nothing to do with the real world. What is my gender, Mom? What is my gender? Your gender is get a job. That's your gender. What are they thinking? Ask what is a woman? They don't know that. That one they're asking all the time, what is a woman? I'll tell you what a woman is. A woman is me. That's what a woman is, okay? A woman is someone who cleans up everybody else's shit. That's what a woman is. A woman is somebody whose boobs hang down to her knees with a prolapsed uterus from giving birth to 5 ungrateful little privileged never had to work for anything in their whole damn life. My pronouns are kiss my
I hope you guys all enjoyed that rant by Roseanne there, which has the vibe of someone who's had a few drinks at a wedding and grabs the mic and starts ranting or something, because these are meant to be jokes. These are so terrible. And also, let me know what you guys think. Do you think this was planned at all? Do you think this is scripted? It just seems like she's shouting stuff into a microphone in front of an audience who will all cheer for her. And I would give the audience the benefit of the doubt that they're being told to cheer, but I've watched enough conservative comedy to know that they probably would cheer this stuff in the first place. You have so many of the greatest hits in there, like the younger generation are ungrateful. They don't work for anything. Like her kids are ungrateful. They have everything handed to them. I find this so funny because, of course, it just reaffirms a conservative worldview of the younger generation are privileged with our avocado toast and soy lattes from Starbucks and vegan diets. Not that younger millennials / Gen Z, I'm not even sure which one I am, are literally like the most screwed generation in decades. Like everything's getting more expensive. We're all working longer hours. We all have better skills. We have better education. But our pay is way, way less. We can't even afford like our own apartments to buy and houses and stuff like that, compared to Roseanne's generation, the baby boomers, which pretty much had like the absolutely best time. But conservatives love this worldview. They love to feel like the younger generations are privileged and they don't like hard work, and they don't like any of this stuff. And I can see if our audience are older, why they would find that funny. But also the what is a woman part, do liberals and leftists say what is a woman all the time? It's actually conservatives who use this line. Like Matt Walsh's documentary was what is a woman. Every time I talk about something to do with trans issues, I get loads of conservatives in my comments saying, what is a woman? You leftists can't define a woman, even though we always define it. It just doesn't fit in with what they actually think a woman is. And then she just screams like, what is a woman? Me. Like, that is a joke. Yeah, Roseanne, you are a woman. We don't disagree with that. But then at the end, of course, saying about the pronouns, kiss my ass. Like pronoun jokes, they're so bad. Like Elon Musk's one about like, my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Like, I don't understand this at all. Like, of course, I know it is motivated by like transphobia and stuff like that, but it's just so, so terrible. And how do conservatives find this funny? Because yeah, we do all have pronouns. Pronouns in bio thing was started, I believe, in solidarity with like trans people. But Roseanne, you have pronouns whether you like it or not. This joke is just so terrible. And it's literally a variation of one of the few jokes conservatives have. Like, I identify as an attack helicopter, or my pronouns are prosecute Fauci, or kiss my ass. Again, absolutely garbage comedy, because at the end of the day, it is just punching down, but it's such a terrible joke, it's hard to find this offensive. And Roseanne said, this is going to be like so offensive. We have to be so offensive. I've been cancelled and now I'm just going to like unleash my offensive comedy. Is this the best you got? is this really offensive? Because although it's in bad taste and it's motivated by bigotry, I would say above being offensive, it's just very, very cringe and very unfunny. And she has absolutely zero charisma to even deliver this in a funny way. Like sometimes when you watch stand-up comedy, a lot of the times it's about the energy translating to the audience, getting them in a mood where they want to laugh at your jokes, right? So sometimes you watch stand-up comedy and you'll be like, oh, that person wasn't really that funny. The jokes really weren't that funny. But because they had such a good energy and they delivered it in such a good way, I can understand why people like this. I can understand why people found it funny with the energy in that room. Can you imagine being in that room with Roseanne Barr and actually legitimately laughing at any of that? But again, with conservatives, I totally believe it because she's just saying stuff that reaffirm their worldview, and that is conservative comedy in a nutshell. So like I said, I'm not sure if I'm gonna play you this Vax clip. I might try and find a tiny little bits to play you just to show how insane it was, so let's see how this goes.
It was just great. How many of you got the Vax? Few of you probably had to get it right. What happened to people that they start believing for some reason that this government had their best interest at heart? My whole family's a bunch of libtards, you know, as I said, and they was called me a conspiracy theorist the whole time, but everything I said turned out to be true. Did they apologize? Hell no.
So I watched the whole clip and I think I've just shown you like parts I clipped out. But again, no charisma, like just saying, have you guys got the vax? And then just like laughing like an insane person. Like, what is funny? This is just so awkward to watch. She's trying to force them to laugh by screaming into the mic like she's the Joker or something. Like, again, is this conservative comedy? She makes Jim Brewer look like some sort of comedic genius running around the stage like an absolutely insane person.
The math up, numbers are going up, numbers are going up.
Because at least with Brewer, I can understand why people might laugh because he's a crazy man. And it's kind of funny sometimes to watch a crazy man be crazy. Whereas with Roseanne, it's just like a crazy person who's had too much to drink, just shouting off conservative talking points. And if conservatives are genuinely laughing at what she's saying, it's literally only because she is saying stuff they agree with, not because she is telling a joke and not because she is funny. And just conservative stand-up comedy is just so amazingly painful to watch, and it's never going to be good because it can't be good. Like I outlined that sketch earlier and I outlined how it could have been funny, and it's basically it can't be funny because their worldview won't allow it to be funny, because often comedy is self-deprecating, often comedy criticizes the status quo, often comedy is good observational humor, and you can't do that if you aren't actually willing to criticize the issues. Like, yes, you can make fun of CNN and all these liberal news networks for how much they freaked out about Trump. But if you're not going to make a point beyond haha, they freaked out about Trump, then it's not funny, because basically you're saying you're laughing at them because they're freaking out about conservatives and think conservatives are bad. Like, is that really funny? But like I said, if you came at it from all like leftist point of view or anti-establishment point of view, you could talk about how, you know, they don't criticize people for the exact same thing because they are absolute hypocrites. And you could talk about how they often run propaganda for the Democratic Party versus how they covered Donald Trump, for example. And maybe that would be funny with the right execution, but with people like Gutfeld, his sketch writing team, with people like Roseanne, the left that are not getting nervous because the right are getting better at comedy, we're just laughing at how hard you're trying and how absolutely terrible it is, because at the end of the day, you can only tell so many jokes about pronouns, you can only tell so many jokes about vaccines and cancel culture before it gets boring and old. So sure, conservatives can be funny. Roseanne might have been funny in her show back in the day. Roseanne might have been funny in the reboot. Tim Allen is quite funny. You know, I like the Santa Claus. I thought it was funny when I was a kid and stuff. Buzz Lightyear is a funny character, which he does the voice for. I accept that. Kelsey Grammer as Sideshow Bob, absolutely hilarious. Sideshow Bob is actually one of the most funny characters in the whole Simpsons. So conservatives can be funny, but can conservatives be funny in a stand-up setting, in a live setting? I don't think they can. And can conservatives be funny when they're writing most of the jokes? I really don't think so. And the reason Gutfeld is popular is not because conservative comedy is making a massive surge in popularity. It's not because Gutfeld is so hilarious, and it's not because Fox News also have Roseanne Barr. It's because conservatives only watch Fox News. You're not going to divide the audience between Fox News and another outlet. People who watch Fox News probably aren't going to watch Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon, so they watch Gutfeld, while liberals and other people will choose among them who they will watch, so it splits the audience. I don't think Gutfeld really is the king of late night, although I'm sure he's let that go to his head, and he probably thinks he's actually hilarious. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.